So good morning all. We have been chatting for the last about 5 minutes, right? Because we came on a bit late today because of some Zoom issues on my end, right? And so we have spoken about vacancies here in Trinidad. You can do the same for Guyana. Maybe one of the days I would, but you don't have to wait on me. That's what I was saying, right? You can just go for yourself, Guyana HSE jobs, UK HSE jobs, Trinidad HSE jobs. And I was just sharing two local vacancies there with local companies. None of those companies are UK based, but they're asking one of them, but if you saw, one was asking for the NIBOSH diploma. The other one was just, a NIBOSH certificate, right? So we spoke about that. And instead of really talking about it, I showed you where I sent it this week. And two students got, a call for the interview anyway, right? Anyway, with that said, today we are focusing on page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going all there, right? We'll be finishing around page 7 today. That is the focus of today's class. So we are 23 persons this morning, 23 persons strong. I of course the host 24, right? 23 persons strong this morning. During this session, I do allow you all to ask questions. You don't have to wait to the end. 10 to 1, you'll forget by the end anyway. But you can ask questions and you could just unmute your mic. Just let me know when you're doing that. For example, if you think, because sometimes I'm teaching, I'm actually looking at the book, right? And so if I'm teaching and you have a question, just sort of unmute the mic and come in and tell me, right? So I'm going straight to that. And the recording some last week, because it was one record, plus that was orientation, I didn't set up the Google Classroom, and there's some reasons for that, right? And so the reasons is more administrative, right? So just keep that in the back of your mind, right? So I'll try to set it up. The thing is, there's another class that finished. They finished and write an exam, but I have not blocked their access then because they have an exam next 2 weeks, right? So what I may do today too, I'm gonna put this video up and then I'm gonna put it on the WhatsApp group for now, because Google storage space, if you don't know, is a paid space. It's something the school have to pay for, and we pay for a certain number of classes. Long story short is that the present batch that have exam next 2 weeks, still they finish, right? They're not really taking classes. The course has been finished. They are more or less in the study mode. In fact, today is a mock exam for them. But the space is still being used then, right? And I think it's convenient for now just to put it on the WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is easier. You can just click it wherever you are at instead of having to log into Google Classroom. But the Google Classroom will be set up and the 2 videos will be placed on it in 2 weeks' time. But for tonight and for today and for tomorrow, for the week ahead, I will continue to put the recording on the YouTube channel and then on the WhatsApp group. Did anybody go and subscribe, or did you all totally forget by 10:30? If you do, like I said, we will see it. And if you don't, we also will see it, right? So when you get some time, Shadrach Ayesh, you could actually subscribe. Lots of content is there. This whole class is there. The whole of chapter 2 is there. The whole of chapter 3 is there. You can get a lot of content there, without, being, or if you want to, then, like, without waiting for that time to come. The project is there. The project details is there. Everything is on the YouTube channel. But it's up to you, right? It's up to you if you just want to ignore everything we're saying, or it's up to you to go and subscribe, right? And to get some access to some information that could be useful for you when the time comes, right? All right, so let's go to the first one. So moral, if you have your book, page 3, right? And I hope you also have some writing material around you, right? Because today's class, the content then is important for your final exam, right? So not every class is like that. I think I was telling you that last week, right? But today's class is 100% important, meaning that what we cover today, or meaning next week, what we cover next week might not be as important as today for exam. It's important, but it's not as important for exam, right? So NIBOSH has a tendency to go down a particular route of questioning then, right? And moral, legal, financial is always on your paper. Next week, we wouldn't be on this. So we can't guarantee that there's going to be a question on this. And that's why I said today, tonight, when I could probably email you all an assignment, because what we're doing today, it have past papers in it, right? All right, let's go with the first one. I'm gonna read a couple of slides and then I'll explain. Or sometimes I explain and then read. But because we had a slow start for today, I think I'll read first and then I'll explain, right? So moral reason. It makes business sense to prevent accidents as opposed to deal with its consequences. They say the average number of days away from work is 33 million. Think about the associated cost of that. There are some statistics you can probably find, I think, on page 3, right? The book has been updated from time to time, so you may find some of that on page 3 now, but no statistics kind of come for exam, right? So there's no need to learn any of the statistics, right? Let me move on a bit here. So I'll come back to that because this is legal, right? Let's finish moral first. So the rights and expectation of employees are entitled to basic human needs or welfare. It's not part of anyone's contract to endure suffering. Employees have certain duties under Section 7 of the acronym here is HACCP. I'll tell you all about that in a bit. Some of those duties is to cooperate with the employer, work safely as not to harm yourself or others, right? And to report defects. So let's go back to moral because your moral is that short, right? That doesn't mean it is what I mean. Moral is important. For example, if you turn your page, you see moral finished just there in about 3 short paragraphs, right? So what does it mean, right? What does it mean? Moral, legal, financial. What does that mean, right? So I'm going to grab my marker here. And what these refer to? These refer to like an obligation that is placed on the employer. And if you want to write that down, right? Moral refers to an obligation that is placed on the employer, right? But for those who finish writing that, but the obligation is not a legal obligation, right? So moral refers to like an obligation placed on the employer, but the obligation is not the law. So what I'm trying to get to here is that moral is not the same as legal, and legal is not the same as financial. It's 3 separate things, right? So moral, we deal with moral first. And what I'm trying to tell you too is that these could be 3 separate questions, right? So moral is moral all by itself. Moral is not legal. And legal is not financial. Each of these are 3 separate terms, but they are like 3 obligations that is placed on the employer. Like the employer has a moral duty to his employees, right? Can I put that here? The employer has a moral duty to his employees, right? So duty to employees. But what does that even mean? You have a moral duty to your employees, right? And then how is that not the law? Because isn't it the same as the law? The answer is no, right? So the law is the law. The law will tell you what the duty of the employer is. So what is a moral duty then, right? So a moral duty, if you want to get the answer for that, a moral duty is the things that are seen to be the right thing to do. So it's not the law. The right thing to do, that's on one of the slides, the right thing to do, right? I just put the right thing here. You can finish it off, right? The right thing to do for your employees is seen as the moral duty of the employer. It's not dictated in the law. I wonder if you're getting that, right? Yeah, sure there. I think some people are having some, yeah, not a problem there. right? If you want to take off the camera a bit, right? For those who haven't, yeah, it's having a lot of trouble, but mine seemed to have sorted out itself. It took about an hour, you know. I was by my machine here 8 o'clock this morning, right? And my thing, you know, the cursor, whatever, that Zoom thing updated itself and then started to rotate. But that was frustrating, right? Because I was here from 8 o'clock. I normally try to set up, and once it's like, for me, 8:30 is late. 8:30, if I'm not in front of the machine, is it? I'm normally here from 8:30, but today I was here from 8 o'clock, and it still give problems anyway, right? For those who may want to do that, please remember, don't you could turn back on your camera, right? Remember, it is a ministry requirement also to be seen then, right, in a place of learning. So you could, if you know you're having a better issues, you could turn it on and off. I have mentioned this last week. If you know you're having tea, you're having breakfast, still you could turn it off for 5-10 minutes, turn it back on. Please take part, you know, as much as possible as we go along, right? All right, again, back to this topic. So we're talking about what does moral mean, and so far we're saying moral mean that the employer have a duty to his employees, right? In fact, there's supposed to be duty of employer. Now look at this, right? Or if we want, we can turn this here, the duty to employees. I'll just put this to E, right? The duty to employees is the employer, but they have a duty to the employees. Now, what we say in moral is different to legal. So we know the employer have certain, you know, things to do for the employees, like provide PPE and stuff. But moral is not that. Moral is that the employer have to do what they have to do because it's the right thing to do, right? Now, see if you're catching this a bit. So if you understand that, then there is a world of answers then to that, because the right thing to do could be, watch my habit, right? Could be in regards to anything. The right thing to do could be in regards to communicating with employees. If you want, please finish the word. I'll try to put as much as I could, right? I'll put communicate, right? So the right thing to do could be communicating with employees. But there's a world of answers to that then. The right thing to do could be training the employees. So it's not bound by the law. It's not bound to say just PPE. Moral duty then means that you do what you have to do. You provide welfare facilities because it's the right thing to do. Do you remember reading on this slide? I had on this slide, but it's on the other one. The other slide had it where it said that it's not part of your contract to endure suffering. So as an employee, you should not be suffering on your job. You should be treated with respect. So there's a lot of things that go here. What's the right thing to do? The right thing to do is to respect employees. Think you understand this a bit. There is more to moral than what the book says, and there's more to moral than the law, because moral goes beyond the law. Think you understand that? The law will be dictative. The law would say provide PPE, provide harness, provide a risk assessment. But moral means you do what you have to do because it's the right thing to do. Do you all understand that a bit? So there's no shortage of answers as what is the moral duty of the employer, right? Let me give another one. We spoke about respect. We spoke about communicating, training, welfare. What about involving? What about cooperating? What about not talking down, right? But involving and cooperating with the employees, right? So to involve or to cooperate with the employees, not tell them, and not tell them, because there's a difference between telling your worker and cooperating with the employees, right? Think again this one a bit. So there's a difference between moral and legal. Moral says the employer have to do what they have to do because it's the right thing to do. It's not part of anybody contract to come on your job and suffer. So things like salary and including keeping them safe. So then keeping them safe on the job is a moral duty, right? Tell me if you think you understand this a bit. Because what you'll find, you see, with tertiary education, the test, the exam is more on understanding. I don't know if you understand what I'm telling you now. No one is going to ask you these words I wrote down here, you know? But this is all about the concept. The concept is that moral means the employer have to do what is right because it's the right thing to do, right? And if NIBOSH was to ask you what will be, you know, like, in fact, it already asked what is 10 moral, right? I think I mentioned last week, if not, I'll mention more. As I told you, we'll cover some comments and we'll cover some concepts today so we can talk about some past papers, right? So what the past papers do, the past papers or the future papers, past or present, they don't really ask you to list 10 moral things, and that's not the question. These things here are meant for you to understand what moral means, right? Moral means is like your civic duty. It's your duty to employees. It's like your duty to humanity, right? It's your duty to your fellow man. The employees are your fellow man, if you want to call it like that, right? It's like your human rights then, you know, to provide certain things for your employees, right? So the fellow man, the neighbor, principal, right? Your brother, you see your employees as your brother's keeper kind of way then, right? So if you understand that, I could kind of reflect a bit on a past paper, even though we now start, but I tell you, moral, legal, and financial is heavy for exams. So there isn't much to it in your book, but the concept is heavy. And if you understand the concept, we can think about a past paper. We can probably look at one at the end. So I'll just mention it, but I won't look at it. I'll try to finish financial and I'll try to finish legal, and then we can probably look at a past paper, right? Tell me if you understand the concept. The concept is moral is like your innate ability to do what is right. Moral means it's your duty to your fellow man, and you're just doing what is right. You don't do the wrong things. You treat them with respect, you communicate, you talk to them. So moral, I was saying, is more than the law, because the law is restrictive. But moral, you do what is right because the person is a person. The same way you going home, the manager is going home at the end of the day. The same way the employee should go home at the end of the day, right? At the end of every employee is a loved one. At the end of every employee is a family. Even if you don't have it yet, those of us who are young, you of course have, you know, your mom, your dad, right? Girlfriend, boyfriend. You still have a loved one or loved ones, right? So at the end, attached to everyone is a family. So the same way the employer is going home at the end of the day and he wants to be safe, he or she wants to be safe and make money. The same thing for your fellow man, right? So if you understand that, and let me, if you do, I'm going to take off what I have on this slide. I'm going to just mention a past paper. We look at it. We look at one because we can't look at all three. We look at it at the end, right? And so if you're okay, please remember that there is no definitive list. That's why the book didn't do much. There's no definitive list as to what is the right behavior. So then the question is this: if we get it for exam and you see 10 marks, what you put in for the 10? If I am saying there is no definitive list, it's not communicate alone, it's not train, welfare, respect, involve, cooperate, being safe, it's not that alone, right? So if there's no definitive list, what do we put for the 10? And I'll tell you what you put for the 10, all right? I'm taking this off. Now, and telling you, you mightn't picture all of it because to really see it, I have to mention a past paper, right? But we're not looking at the past paper at this particular moment. So the question is now, this is a 10-mark question, right? So I mean, this is not really if, right? When these questions come, they come for 10 marks, right? So the question is, if we have just said that, you know, moral is what is right, and it's a 10-mark, it boils down to a 10-mark question. So then what are we going to write? Where are we getting the 10 moral things from? The answer is to that, the case study, right? The answer is the case study. So from last week, you remember I said the case study is like a comprehension. It's like 2 pages. By the way, the case study is not very long, right? It's 2 pages, right? Those of us, I mean, we all would have done English A or maybe the GCE version of English in the Caribbean and South America here. When you did your English A or your GCE English paper, you would have had some very long passages to read. I don't know if you remember paper one. For English A, there's two papers. There's paper one and paper two. Paper one have some long comprehensions, right? Longer than NIBOSH. I don't know if you remember that, right? So, but your NIBOSH case study is just 2 pages, right? So what do I mean by you can get it from the case study? What are we getting from the case study? The answer is this, right? You're getting what is moral, right? From the case study. You see, as you read the case study is like a story. It's like a recollection of an accident that happened, right? All case studies are like that. So when you read it, hear what I'm telling you. When you read it and you see in it, it said the employee was trying to communicate or trying to set up a meeting with the employer, but the employer said he was too busy. That's where you're getting it from. The case study is the answer. When the passage says the employer is too busy, right, then you could say, right, I don't know if you remember if I spoke on this last week, I'll talk about an exam structure or an answer structure, but then you can say that the fact that the employer was too busy means that he's not fulfilling his moral duty to the employee, because time is not in the law. The law never said spend time with your employees, but spending time with them is the right thing to do. Folks, you understand that? There's no law to say spend time with your employees, but if the employee is requesting a meeting and the case study said the employer is too busy, he said, I do not have the time, right? Then you can say what was morally wrong there was that the employer should have made the time for the employees. So I told you last week, the passage is the answer. So like that, you have to get 10 like that from the passage, and it will be there. You just have to take your time and look for it. Now that does take some time because you have to kind of search the lines on them to find what the answer is. Let me just give you another one. I'm gonna find another one. If as you read the passage, so if you want, you could take it down as an example, but you take it down in your own way. You could take it down as the fact that the employer said he was busy, right? So you could take it down as an example. In the case study, you'll come across those lines that said the employer was too busy for the meeting. And then you say, well, morally, they fail in their duty then, because they should have made time for the employee. And there are many such answers. I can't give you all. That's what I'm telling you. There's a world of answers, but the answers is in the case study, right? I just do another one. About 100 went through my mind just now, right? And now these that I'm telling you, right? I'm not really making them up, enough. These are actually from past papers, right? So I just thought about 3 just to see what's the most exciting one for you all. So it had one where in the passage, a young employee used a fire extinguisher. You could write this down, folks. Don't wait for me to write it. The markers give trouble, right? The Zoom marker is not the friendliest marker, but I'll write a little word for you in a bit here. So in one of the case studies, I had where an apprentice, a young employee, used a fire extinguisher to wake up a sleeping supervisor. It didn't finish there. Let me tell you what was wrong in that, right? What was wrong in that was when the supervisor woke up, the passenger said they saw the comical side of it. Both persons saw the comical side of it then, right? When the supervisor should have disciplined that employee, right? So when you read that, remember, it's like a comprehension. You can say, well, what is morally wrong was that the supervisor failed in his duty to discipline the employee, in that they saw the comical side of it. In fact, later the passage said, the supervisor said, if you don't say nothing, I wouldn't say anything. That's what the passenger said, right? It said, the supervisor said, if you do not say anything, I wouldn't say anything. But then that's morally wrong. You understand? That's not wrong. It may be wrong in the law, eh? It may be wrong in the law, but joking then, comical side of things then, that horseplay is actually part of the law, eh? But you know, they didn't say horse, but they say comical. So they said, so comical is not the law. But seeing the comical side of somebody using an extinguisher to wake up somebody else is morally wrong, right? So then, you understand what I get in that, folks? So then you say what's morally incorrect or morally wrong is that the supervisor should have disciplined the worker, but saw the comical side of it. Again, the answer, and folks, I hope you're getting it. NEBOSH is easy to pass. I told you this last week. There's no, well, it's easy to pass now. So I need to rephrase that. However, it's not easier. It's easy to pass, but it's not easy. You still have to put in the work, right? The minute you don't put 10 answers there, you don't write them properly, but then you fail. Remember, I cannot pass it with NEBOSH. NEBOSH is NEBOSH all by itself. So what we tell students is that NEBOSH is easier to pass now because this way of testing is because of the pandemic, right? But before it was memory based. Like how I wrote the 6 answer, you had to remember that. But now it's not confined. It's not confined to 6 answers. It's just what is morally wrong in the passage, right? If you want another one, so I'll give you 3. So this one is that they saw the comical side. You could just write it down a bit, right? They saw the comical side of using a fire extinguisher. I'll just put FE there, right? And as I close this one, I just thought of another one. Another one I saw was that there was no first aider. They were looking for a first aid kit and nobody could find it, right? They're looking for a first aid kit and no one could find the first aid kit, right? So could anybody tell me how they would see that one? If you want to kind of put that in writing, like how would you say, you know, like there was no first aider?
I would say that they wouldn't prepare first if an accident happened in the workplace.
Right, but you need to say what was morally wrong. So you need to say like there was no first aider. So that's the thing. It's just like clear cut. Like how, I wonder if you understand what I said there. It's like you don't have to do too much thinking with NEBOSH. If they say the person used the fire extinguisher, you say that is what it is. You just so there's no big interpretation other than saying what's morally wrong then. Right? So if there was no first aid and no first aid kit, but then you say, well, then that's what is morally wrong. Think you understand that? It's easier than you think because it's just surface level. It's easier than you think, right? So if there were no first aider, then you say, then what is morally wrong is that there were no first aider or there were no first aid kits that were present, right? So that's what I said. Passing exam is not hard. But from last week, I mentioned to you all passing exam is like a technique, right? And then each of these must be on proper lines. I'll show you a bit on that a bit later on, right? We cannot touch the past papers. I want to move on to financial right now, exactly get into 9:45, right? So we'll build on this for now. Understand that moral is heavily tested. How do you get your answers? You get them from the passage. Where do you get them from? You get them from inside there. You need 10 different ones. Like if you said the employer was busy, comical, so you can't go back. You can't go back into, you can't give another answer with the manager being busy. They wouldn't mark it, right? And then each of these must be expressed as a complete sentence or sentences, about 3 lines. I'll talk about this a little bit later on. Let me move on to financial. And once you do about 10 of that, that is good enough to go, right? So we kind of build on it. Today really is your first class, right? So I don't want to do every single thing in one class. As long as I could give you the idea and you could start realizing, well, we could do this. We could do this, right? And if you could start realizing that from your very first class, we have 5 months ahead of us, we would master it by that time anyway, right? Let me check with the chat. If anybody writing anything down, take it off because I'm going to clean that in a couple of seconds. Very good, right? Glenn, Steve, no welfare privilege. If you read the case study and they say that, Oh, sorry, that's what we were saying. Yeah, welfare, happy first aid may fall under welfare. So you can say what is morally wrong is that they didn't. So this is the sentence, right? What is morally wrong, or in my belief, or in my opinion, what is morally wrong is that there were no welfare provisions, such as first aid, and you have to go to the passage and then quote where you saw that in the passage. But I'll build on that as the classes go along, right? For now, we want to get the idea that the answers are in the passage, right? You can go to Google too, you know, you can go to Google, but when you get the answer from Google, if Google says,
Chris,
yeah, sorry.
ready? Chris, right? See him?
Oh.
No? All right.
Okay, just remember, keep your mics on mute, right? Yeah, I was saying, yeah, if you get an answer from Google, if Google says morally wrong is, you know, like a failure to communicate, fine. But you have to find it in the passage. You have to tie it back in. It's like a comprehension. That's what I said last week. If you remember doing comprehension, you cannot give the answer alone. You have to refer back to the comprehension. Otherwise, you don't get the mark, right? All right, we'll build on this, like I said, as the time goes by, right? I'm taking it up. Let's go to the next one. You need to turn your page. You turn your page, right? So when you turn your page, you'll see financial. See if you're seeing that. You let me know. Those of us who don't have the book, just give me a minute. I'll line it up on the slide here as well. Right? Financial. I think what we'll do, you know what we could do? We could do financial and then reflect on our past paper. And we could leave legal for next week, right? Otherwise, we would not really be, you know, I mean, we'd have to kind of do, but as we do it now, we could reflect on our, because there are past papers on these, you see. You see, if it didn't have, there was no need to stop. But you heard me say that. I hope you all wrote that down, right? Like 5 months from now, when you write an exam and you want to know what question come in, I will tell you moral, legal, financial. After we do all that work, I will still come back and tell you moral, legal, financial, because it's that important, right? All right, if you have the book, page 4. If you don't have the book, look at the slide. Now, what I'll do, here what I'm trying to do, right? If the exam is open book exam, an open PowerPoint exam, well, then I don't really need to read this to you. True? What I need to do is explain it, because you could always read it. You could always open the slide and get it. But when I explain it, you wouldn't need to read it because you'll understand it, right? So let me explain it a bit, right? So I'm going to keep to this slide, if you all could see this one, and I explain it using this slide. If you want, you can make some subnotes. I'll come back and do a little bit of reading, but reading is not explanation. And you see, seeing that it's an open book exam, open PowerPoint exam, you could open the PowerPoint and take it if you want. But the thing is, you have to understand it, right? So listen to this a bit, right? So I'm taking it back to the start. So the start of this, right, it was somewhere in the 19th century. I think it was 1920. I know you're not seeing that here, but I'm telling you where this came from, right? So a German psychologist came up with this idea, right? His name was Heinrich, Heinwich. You could pull up a picture with him, but you know what Germany was like back then, right? You would see the German symbol, and of course those things carry certain values and meaning with it, right? But he is and was, of course, he passed away now, a German, right? Anyway, this was actually part of the theory. There are a lot of things happened. Remember, NASA and stuff got started. NASA, all the technology and stuff came from Germany. So a lot of things was happening in Germany. Germany was like the superpower at the point in time. America was around, you know, but it wasn't, you know, all of that, right? Germany was a superpower. So a lot of ideas, a lot of research, a lot of technology was coming out of Germany. And Heinrich came up with this theory. He said that when an accident happened, right, there's more than one cost associated with the accident. So the iceberg theory refers to things like cost, right? So there's more than one cost associated with the accident, right? Basically, what he said is that there's what is called the direct cost. If you want, please take a note, right? You'll see it in your book. If you watch your book page 4, you'll spot the words. You'll see direct cost, and there is the indirect cost. And what Heinrich said was that he said the direct cost is like the cost that you see. Yeah, with your eyes, you can actually see it, right? Yeah, so the direct cost is the cost that you can see, or there's another word for see, which is estimate, right? So the direct cost is what you see or what you can estimate. So if, God forbid, I'm just giving you a vehicle accident, right? If, God forbid, not yours, right? A company vehicle reversed onto a gate, right? Onto the barrier gate then, right? So if you were the safety and you would be the safety and you come down on the scene, there are certain things that you would see to the vehicle. Let's say it was a pickup, right? So could somebody tell me some of the things you would see if you were the safety, you got a call saying, look, a van reversed onto one of the company's gate. You have been called to go down and investigate, right? What are some of the costs? What are some of the damages then you would see?
You'll see the damage of the gate, the fence.
Very good.
Probably
So you can
of
see
the
the damage to
vehicle.
the gate, yeah?
Right.
Anybody else?
You would see the external damage to the vehicle.
Very good, very good. Anyone has one more?
You see any damage done to persons who were near to either the vehicle or the gate?
Excellent. Yeah, very good. You all hit the tree, right? So anyway, so you would see the damage to the gate. If it's a roller shutter gate or if it's an electronic gate, fine, you'll see that, right? You'll see maybe the damage to the bumper. Depends on the vehicle, depends on how hard the person reversed. You'll see also the person that driving, if anybody was around, the person may have a bit of whiplash, right? They may have hit that barrier hard, right? So that's what you can see. But here the thing now, right? Here the thing. I want to give my cost there. What do you think? And we are Guyanese. Like I said, I'm not seeing this student from the UK here. So for those of us in Guyana, we just have the money by 30. Those of us in the UK, if you listen back to the recording, well, the UK cost is almost the same. You just add a 0, right? So the damage to the gate here, what I'll give you one. So the damage to the gate, I'll put TT here. TT, and just so to make it fair, this is TT 1000, right? So that'll be 30,000 Guyanese dollars to the vehicle, TT. And of course, in the UK, this will be £100, right? In terms of the vehicle, if it's a bumper, we may be talking about $3,000, depends on the type of vehicle. Again, you multiply by 30, that'll be 90,000 Guyanese. So you take off a 0, and that will be £300. To the person, though, it may just be the medical bill. It just may be to check them out, maybe by a doctor. It may be TT 450, right? Private doctor, that's a kind of higher end of it anyway. So what I'm saying is that there's a cost attached to the accident. This accident so far is costing $4,450. This is what Heinrich was saying, that there's a cost attached to the accident, right? Please note again, the direct cost is what you can see. Now, see is not just with your eyes, but see is estimated, and that's what we're doing here. We estimating the damage to the gate. We estimating the damage to the vehicle. Medical doctor fee could be less or more, depends on which doctor you go to. This is a private doctor I'm talking about, maybe about 450 TT, right? So if you read here, you'll see some of the direct costs could be covering injury, ill health, and damage. Tell me if you're okay with that. Tell me if you understand that sort of direct cost. Yeah? All right. But here's the thing. Heinrich didn't say that alone, because if you're looking at the picture, you realize he drew it like an iceberg. He said the cost that you see is what you see, like an iceberg floating on top of the water. You'd see that piece. You'll see that piece, right? But if you look at what he said there's another cost. There's another cost. This is the indirect cost. Now, later on, they replaced the words with insured and uninsured. But in 1920, when he said it, he said direct and indirect. So if you watch your book, you will see direct and indirect. See if you're seeing that in your book on page 1, let me know, right? And when you watch page 5, you'll see insured and uninsured, because later on, they changed the words to insured and uninsured, right? Tell me if you see it, yes or no, quickly. Put it in the chat. Let me know if you're following.
That's right.
Okay, good, great. So
Yes,
let's
sir.
get back to Heinrich. So Heinrich said that there is another cost, and that other cost is like a cost that you didn't think about at first. You don't see it. You don't see it. You just seeing the damage to the bumper. You just seeing the damage to the gate. But you don't see that at first. Like you didn't think about it at first. But it could be referred to as the knockdown effect. It could be referred to as, you know, the cost down the road, right? But he said it as the indirect cost, and it's below the C, so you didn't see it at first, right? You didn't think about that at first. But what he said, listen to what he said. He said the indirect cost is 36 times what you think you was going to pay. And later on, psychologists said it wasn't 36, it was 8. And then some people say it was 12. So in theory, they just put 8 to 36, right? But initially, again, in 1920, when Heinrich said it, he said it was 36 times. Later on, you know, 1920 to now is a long time. None of us would have been alive then, and none of your parents probably wasn't born then either, right? Most of us, most of your parents are still around, right? I mean, in terms of age, and they would not be around from 1920, right? They would have been probably 40s, 50s, 60s, right? So 1920 is a long time, and over the years, and people change the figures, but what is said in the textbooks today, it is like 8 to 36. But Heinrich, what he had in mind was 36 times. The point is this, the point is that some things, how you try to estimate it, it turns up to be worse, right? It's like, what if the gate, you said, okay, the gate look as if it have an impact, if this is a automatic gate, right? But when you go to straighten that, and you try to get the motor to turn that, to get the gate open and close, the motor itself, the impact it got, the motor is not good anymore. Or the mechanism, because you're straightening that gate, it's not working the same way again. And then you realize, hey, what now? We have to change this gate. But you didn't think about that at first. You understand that, folks? The $3,000 here, right? What if this accident was the security guard that sort of inadvertently let the gate come down on somebody's vehicle, and the person said, I don't want that. I want a new vehicle. You know, there are people like that, especially if they know your company have money. Now, they probably have insurance, right? But the overhead and thing that your company may have to pay that, right? What about this person here that went to the doctor? What about they had a past injury? What about they had a slip disc? What about they had a surgery? And what happened here is no way $450. What happened here now is the person has had a relapse, and the person decides to sue the company. They make a civil claim. Now, civil claims are very expensive. They could be like $500,000 TT, right? So you didn't think about that. You just say, look, Frank or Jane, you didn't really know Jane history, that Jane have a bad back, or Frank have a bad back, or you had surgery. You didn't know that. You know them coming to work and they're looking normal. But because of this, it has escalated the problem them. So those are the things that you don't see, right? Let's talk about if you look at some of them here, what about if this is, and let's come off my example. I could come off my example a bit. What if what has happened is a death? What if what has happened, the accident makes it to the news then, like what we have in Trinidad here, right? What if a client who was a BP, a BHP, an Exxon, what if, because your company in the news now, not because of this accident, but a bigger accident, a spill or something, right? What if they just decide to say, here, what now? We just going elsewhere. We just going with another company. There's no shortage of companies that providing this service that you provided. You are supplying us with a certain kind of pipe or pump, and there's 10 other companies doing that. Right now, you in the news, right? And we are Exxon, we are BP, BHP. We don't really want to be associated with that. But you were banking on that $1 million contract, $1 billion B, right? And you lost that. So those are the things that you didn't see. Those are the things that you didn't think about, right? So this is what Heinrich was saying, that accidents have two costs. It have the cost that you can see, and it have the cost that you cannot see. The one that you cannot see, like the iceberg, is way bigger than what you thought it was, right? And this is how it is. We could read some from here. Investigation costs. What about that? OSHA. So there are fines. So if you know that there are fines associated with accidents, right? Including this same accident here, right? There are fines. And the fines, people, is not small. Not in Trinidad, not in Guyana, it may be small, right? The fine in Guyana is 45,000 Guyanese dollars. That's not much. That's about like 3,000-4,000 TT. But the TT fine is actually large. The TT fine is $10,000 per violation. And could I write one here for you? The fine in the UK is also very big. The fine for a company not like providing a safe piece of work equipment is £20,000. And yes, you'll have to know this figure. So that's why I write this one down. I didn't write down the TT one. I just made reference to it, 10,000 TT. I did not write down the Guyana fee, which is 45,000 Guyanese dollars. But the one you have to know is the one from the UK, right? £20,000. Before we leave this, two things, right? Tell me if you understand the concept of direct costs, direct and indirect, things that you see, things that you don't see, right? And if you're okay with that, I want somebody to tell me how much money is this in TT, the £20,000. How much money is that in TT? If you had to guess how much was that in TT dollars, how much is that in TT?
200,000.
Close to 200,000. So that's a lot of money. And you didn't think about that. You just thought about 4,450, which is plenty. Some companies will roll their eyes when they see this. But what about when they see this? What about when they see as a lawsuit and then they have $500,000 to pay? Right? Okay, folks, tell me if you understand what we can do here. I can show you some things on this slide and we could reflect on the past paper because the concept is what you need to understand, right? I'll say it one more time. The concept is when an accident happens, it have two costs. The ones you see first and the ones that you don't see. The ones that come back to bite you then, and the one that comes back to bite you is more than what you thought you was going to pay, right? You know? Tell me if you get it a bit. If you do, I'm just going to touch the slide a bit, and then we're going to reflect on the past paper. Reflecting me now tell you how this question will come, or how it could come, or how it has come. That's the most I can do, right? Remember, we don't set the paper, but we could reflect on how it came, how it normally comes, and how it could come again, right? One person in the chat, anybody not clear? Anybody want me to go over anything? All right, if not, if you change your mind, just let me know, right? But I'm taking this off, so I wouldn't be able to come back to this writing then, right? You could probably come back to it. So I have this on this slide. If you go to my slide, I was telling you, I have it here. If you watch, you'll see it. I have the cost, right? I have like the indirect uninsured cost. I have a bunch of them. Accumulated business loss, product or process liability claims, recruitment of replacement staff. You have to recruit somebody now to replace the one that was injured. What about you have to get two persons to do your job? What you was doing before was always two people job, but you get injured now and two people have to come and take your job now because what you were doing was double the work, right? I have more, I have more, I have more. That's what I said, I could have read this slide, but you see, reading this slide is not the explanation. You could always come back to this slide now. You see, once we explain it, you now know what the slide have in it. The indirect uninsured cost, loss of goodwill and corporate image. You know, there's a serious one. When you lose your image then, when you lose your corporate image, nobody wants to work for you. Everybody have the perception Paria is an unsafe company. You can't come back for that. It does take years to come back from a corporate image, right? Being tarnished then. It takes years. It takes like 10 years, sometimes a generation. People have to forget. People have to forget what happened to your company, right? Anyway, some of the other one, production delays. What about this one? Extra overtime payment. They now have to double up to cover your shift. Additional administrative time incurred. What about the cost of hiring somebody else, as I mentioned, sending out vacancy ads? You have to put the cost of that. Lower employee morale following the accident. So the employees are not working, you know, to rule. Maybe they're just doing what the bare necessity. they come into work, but they're in a state. Think of these things, especially if in your company has had, sorry, I shouldn't say that, because we have had incidents in the region then, like where somebody would have passed away there, right? I had as well. I don't know if I shared that with you last week. I think I did, right? So like the days after somebody passed away in your company, it has been like in a days, literally, DAZE, right? You'll take about maybe 2 weeks even to catch yourself, right? And like I said, when the Paria incident happened, for those of us who know, well, maybe you did not know, I had students in class who family members, they were in the live when that happened. We were in a live, right? And one of the girl texted and said, well, she said she have to leave. She got something saying her uncle passed away. And then there were other students in the class, more than 6 of them, who were actually working in Paria, right? So lower employee morale could affect cost then. You come to work, but you're not very productive, right? Have you thought about things like that? Have you thought about things like the cost of counseling that companies have to pay? Massey pays for it and companies pay for it. All of those is cost. You didn't think about that first, right? What about that employee after? Listen, folks, I could give you a live one. And I had something that happened like about 2 weeks ago, and the student told me he's resigning from his job because of what happened. He said he can't work there because if something happens to him, they don't owe him anything, then he doesn't have any benefits. So he said he turned his letter of resignation. What about that? And he was a skilled worker. What about following the accident? A couple of other employees decide to leave because they say, here what now? If what has happened here to Frank could happen to us, and we have nothing to get in this company. So we have applied elsewhere. Workers call us elsewhere. We have a better package, and you lose your whole team, right? First aid training and the provision of facilities equipment. Okay, so if you're okay with that, you can read all this slide. I have a bit more. Now, there's a little bit more to this. I'll probably come back to this next week a bit, right? Because, or if not, I'm looking at the time. We have some time enough. But I want to reflect on the past paper, right? For example, then, page 5, there's something they have to tell you about page 5, and I'll leave it for next week, right? I want to reflect on the past paper because the page 5 itself is not, well, not, I mean, I can't make that claim, but the page 5 has not come for exam. What has come for exam is page 4, right? What they look for exam is the iceberg then. That is what has come for exam. Let me check with the chat a bit and have one comment there, then I'll reflect on the past paper. Yeah, very good. Mental health in the workplace is affected. And then that also means the worker is not working as they should. So, you know, when you should have gotten 10 things done, you got nothing done. And for that week, it's okay because the company know what has happened, right? All right, folks. So reflecting on the past paper, right? And then I want to show you one. So listen up, right? So of the 2 of them, if you wonder what 2 are talking about, direct and indirect, the most common one is indirect for exam. Again, people, be careful what I'm telling you. This is just a trend. I am not Nibosh. Don't go and say, I say, right? I just telling you, all I told you this last week. Any teacher can do it. If you're teaching fractions, you can say mixed fractions will come. They wouldn't give you improper fractions because mixed fractions is the final end of it then. So in a mixed fraction, when you convert it, you'll get an improper fraction. If you remember that. The point of the story is that a teacher could tell you what could come. It doesn't mean it have to come. But in terms of trend, indirect is the most common one. And isn't that easier if indirect is the most common one? They normally ask 10 indirect. Sometimes they ask more. And then sometimes they use the word uninsured. Uninsured, right? So where do you get the answers from? Folks, listen to what I'm telling you. I don't know if you're catching this. In tertiary education, not everything is in your book. That's what I tell you. Those who have the book and those who have the book didn't have the book. To me, it's not important. Because if you can go to the case study and you can see the case study, what about if the case study said something that you're not seeing in your book, like mental health? Would you ignore that as an answer? You can't, because the case study have it. If you open the case study and you read it, says Well, I know I touch on this one, right? So I just, because of the want of a better explanation, if it says then that the local enforcing authority is planning to visit the company to issue a fine, would you ignore that? You can't ignore that, right? An indirect cost then is that there's going to be a fine. So again, here what I'm telling you, you're free to Google this, folks. Now I'm telling you, we need more classes for me to build what I want to tell you, right? But I could tell you some. I could show you how to do an answer planning. But for now, all I could tell you, you could Google, you could use your notes, you could use your textbook, you could use the case study, right? Where you're getting the 10 from, I just tell you. If the book have 8 and you couldn't get 10, Google it. Google what are the indirect cost of an accident. Maybe Google will bring up one that wasn't in the book. Could you use it? You probably could use it, right? Maybe as you read the case study, I'm trying to see if you could find a crazy one. Maybe if you read the case study, they mention something like work equipment, a new piece of equipment has to be sourced, right? And so then that's not in the book, right? So you can, is that an indirect cost? Yeah, because the old one got damaged, it got replaced. You now have to buy another piece of equipment. So you could use it from the case study. Tell me if you understand that, because I want to try to open a pacifier. Now, here's the thing, right? I don't know if I load it up. No, I did. But how the computer was given trouble, I had to restart the computer a couple of times. So let me just see. I'm seeing the one for my degree class. This is not yours. I don't know if you saw it. That's not yours. That's one for my degree students. Okay, I think I saw one for you. The two of them are media. Okay, so this is what a typical paper looks like. Just give me 1 minute to just grab a sip of water here, and I'll go through this with you. Yeah. Okay, so a typical paper. I think I'd opened one for you last week. Just verify me if you all could see it. Are you all seeing NEBOSH Management of Health and Safety? Are you all seeing that? Yeah, okay, good. Because sometimes our view different now.
Yeah.
Okay, great, right? So all papers look the same way. Folks, anyway, like I say, it's too early to talk techniques, right? So this is December 2021. Initially, I had April paper here now, but how the computer closed when it was 9 o'clock, and I told you I was trying to sort it out. I was trying to see what I could load up, man. This is the first one my hand clicked on. So I said, okay, any past paper is any past paper, right? So you'll see the case study, right? You'll see a case study. That's 1 page, right? It's not too long, right? It's not rocket science. So 2 pages, right? So I wasn't wrong. And then we look at the questions. Now today is the very first class, so I can't guarantee that there'll be a question. However, remember I told you moral, legal, and financial is on every paper, right? Remember I said that? So we haven't reached legal, but look, this is a legal question, right? I'm looking to see if there's anything on, oh, look, I have one here. Number 3, but you have to twist the answers in number 3. I'll tell you what I mean by that, right? So this paper had 8 questions. You have 24 hours to do the 8 questions. Not that you have to do it. I'm just saying the students who wrote this would have had, and you would have 24 hours to in your paper, right? So number 3 is the financial question. However, it's not a hand-me-down. It's not a copy and paste. You have to twist the same thing I now taught you into this answer here. So financial argument to improve health and safety. They say based on what? Based on Google? Based on what? Based on the textbook? Based on what here, folks? Based on the scenario only. That's what I tell you. So we provide everybody with a book that comes with the cost. You know some schools don't do that. Most places don't do that. You know that, right? Check around. Even in England, they don't give you a book, right? Anyway, based on the scenario only, what financial arguments in relation to the accident could you use to convince the directors that health and safety needs to be improved? Now, it's the same answers. What I would do here, I could have said, You could take the answers, some direct and indirect, but you have to integrate it into this question then. It's like an argument, right? Okay, like if we go back, so let's go back to fines. But you had to write it in a way like an argument, but still in about 3 or 4 sentences. So you can say, right? You can say an argument. You can start up this like that, an argument. Or you can say, well, I would suggest that the answer is fines. You understand what I get in that? But you're taking it and you're twisting it. You're not going to write back fines alone if we say one of the answers is fines, right? But you're making fines an argument then. You say, in my view, you can say it like that. You're taking the same answer as fines, which is an indirect cost. You can say fines, right? So when you Google or when you look at the book, that's what you'll see, but you don't have to integrate it. You see how NIBOSH is smart, people? You all see how the open book exam, you can't copy for it? This is because of the pandemic. Did you understand what I just said? If you put fines alone, it'll be wrong. But fines is the answer. But there's an open book exam, like a comprehension. So you have to weave this into the answer. You have to say, in my opinion, I would suggest to the directors that they need to improve health and safety to avoid the cost of fines, right? First up, then you can say fines in the UK amount to £20,000, right? This could be avoided if health and safety is improved on. And when you read the passage, you can see maybe what they did wrong and there's tagging part of the line there. Tell me if you understand what I just did there. And that's why it's an open book exam. That's why having the book open doesn't really make you pass. Who makes you pass? You make you pass. I think I told you that last week. You take the same answer. Let's go to production. Which one you all said? Production delays? Somebody said that production delays. And the other one when I was writing it, right? So you take the same thing, production delays. Production delays is the answer. Production delays is what the book will tell you. Production delays is what Google will tell you. But writing production delays would make you fail. You had to know how to write it. You see, if you write it like this, you'll get it wrong. In fact, you won't get it wrong. They'll just put 0 because it doesn't worth any marks like that. Again, folks, I'll say it again. You all understand how NIBOSH is smart here with the open book exam? You understand what you have to do. You have to do it like a comprehension. You did comprehension like this, right? If you did, your primary school had comprehension and then secondary school had comprehension, poems and comprehension, you have to tie it inside there. You have to say, you can say in my opinion or I would suggest to the directors that to avoid the cost of an accident and to avoid production delays, they need to improve health and safety, right? We can say production delays can mean that a company will go out of business if they are unable to fulfill orders for clients and customers. Therefore, health and safety should be improved on to avoid production delays. And of course, it tied back with the passage. But today I'm not doing that because today is not our last day. Today is our first day of teaching. And look how far you all reach, right? Tell me what you think. Tell me if you think you can do it. If you cannot do it, and if you think you can do it, fine. But it's not fine because, speaking of fine, I have to give you an assignment to prove that you could do it. I have to give you an assignment to see how you can do this. And if you cannot do it as yet, that's good. But we have 5 months together. We have 5 months to get it right. We have 5 months, to understand, and for you to understand how to write these things. What I could do for you, now I do have it loaded up. What I can do for you another day, I could show you somebody's paper. I have students, I told you all that, who passed this course. Look how much people got certificates. I'm here, right? We have been around the longest. We have been around, that doesn't make us older. We have been around the longest, right? We have been around the cheapest. 10 years ago, it was still cheaper to do NIBOSH here. 15 years ago, it was still cheaper to do NIBOSH here. Today, it's still cheaper to do NIBOSH here. Compare this course elsewhere. 8,000, 9,000 TT elsewhere, right? And we're still the cheapest and we're still the best. We're still the longest serving, course provider in the region at the moment, right? So we have some time together. That's what I'm saying, right? And the first time you do an assignment, don't feel bad, right? That's something I want to tell you with NEBOSH. A lot of people are not prepared for that. Like when you get your feedback, then it's never perfect. If it's perfect for the first time, I'm so happy, right? But don't be worried. We are here. The assignments are meant to help you. They're not meant, we can mark them, but NEBOSH told us not to mark them. I don't know if you know that, right? We are told not to mark your projects, certainly projects, sorry, the exam or the assignment, because remember, we are not markers, and I don't want to give anybody false. But I could tell you if it's good, bad, fair. All right. Normally, if you see a tick with it, it means it's correct. If you see 6 ticks out of 10, it means you get 6 out of 10. If you see 8 ticks out of 10, you're 10, it means you get 8 out of 10. You see 3 ticks out of 10, it means you get 3 out of 10. Right? But the assignments, folks, you understand, is for you. Is for you. And if you could catch the technique from now, where the exam is a breeze, and the people who catch the technique until they finish the exam fast enough. Some people say they finish it by 2 o'clock in the evening, 2:30 in the evening, you know. All right, I'm trying to get you registered. I think I'll stop here because I have another class, and it's just 10 minutes again. I don't know if anybody have any questions. I can leave the floor open for that, and we can stop here for today. We cannot start law. It is too long. And you'll see the words of the course. It look simple in the textbook, but NEBOSH is heavy, right? One line is a power pack line then, right? Especially when you see it for exam. Who said it for exam? I did, but look at even showing it here. Look at have a question here. This one was financial, and look at how a legal question. So maybe next week, but we don't have to do this paper, Every paper have moral, legal, or financial. It don't have all in us. Some sittings, they bring legal alone. Some sittings, they bring financial alone. Some sittings, they bring moral alone. Like, for example, this one didn't have moral, but April did. This month, April 2024, right? The last question was on moral. A lot of students like it. That's the thing. Like when you see, the thing is after you understand moral mean what is wrong, like I asked the class, we have an interview with them after the exam, right? So I asked them which one did they do first. Actually, they had financial and they had moral. Number 1 was financial for them in the April paper. And number 8 or number 9 was moral. They had 9 questions, right? So in the interview, which we have to do with you as well, when you finish with your exam, I asked them, what did they do first? Like you could do questions first now. Most of them said they did number 1 and number 9. Because most people, like what is morally wrong, you can just get that from the passage. So you can't get that wrong. You understand? All right, folks, let me, do we have any questions on air? And I don't call the roll on air. I think I told you that for some of you would have revealed, reasons why you're not here. Some of it being personal reasons. I don't call the roll on air, but I could, but that's just my thing anyway. Right now we are 24 persons strong because we had a couple people that came in anyway, right? A couple of, we also have, I think, a repeater on this batch as well, right? Folks, do you have any questions? Let me stop the recording.